10 years ago in Flint, Michigan, a state-appointed emergency manager switched the source of the city's drinking water to the Flint River. Soon after, Flint residents raised concerns about their drinking water. Concerns state officials initially dismissed. Mark Edwards, a researcher at Virginia Tech, ran tests and confirmed there was in fact lead in the city's water supply.
Hello, Flint!
Then in 2016, former President Barack Obama declared a federal state of emergency in Flint. And this led to a wave of protests and calls for everyone involved in switching Flint's water source to be held accountable. A decade after the crisis began, Bridge Detroit reporter Bryce Huffman spoke with Mark Edwards, whose concerns about Flint have changed.
When did you first suspect that that might have been overblown?
There was about a 2-week time period where I was relieved that this was not going to get covered up and people were taking lead in water seriously before I realized that this narrative was spinning out of control.
That narrative was that Flint kids had been permanently damaged by lead in their drinking water and that they were never going to properly develop mentally.
But after that 2-week time period, I really got concerned because I realized that Flint parents and Flint kids were being told that they'd been subjected to some kind of unprecedented lead exposure via water that might permanently damage their brains, and I tried to speak out against it, as did others. But the major narrative was that this horrific lead poisoning occurred when, in fact, the blood lead of Flint children never exceeded that of the average for the state of Michigan significantly, even during the worst of the water crisis. So it should have been good news that we prevented serious harm, but instead this story took on a life of its own, and frankly, it's been running wild for ever since, almost 8 years now.
Initially alarmed about lead in the water, Edwards later began to worry that the narrative of irreparable harm was itself damaging.
And so it really wasn't until 2018 when I realized that someone had to start speaking out against this. So we started speaking out more and doing more research and trying to get our results published that said this is really a false narrative, and oh, by the way, this could really be hurting children, to be telling them that they're brain damaged and can't learn when that never happened. And the more I saw, the more I realized the amount of harm that was accruing to these kids, and I just felt it was my ethical obligation to speak out regardless of the consequences.
What happens now with those kids in Flint who for years have been hearing from the media, from clergy, from parents, from teachers that they're not able to develop and learn the way that they should?
I'm terrified of what's going to happen to these kids because the harm that's occurred to them is very, very real. I do believe that many of the things that people are observing in terms of learning difficulties and acting out in school and disciplinary problems are really occurring. The question is, what is the cause? Was it the lead in water, or was it the fact these children believe what they were told? And I don't think that story is true, but it is nonetheless very, very harmful to these children. And so unless you properly identified the source of the harm, how can you hope to rectify it?
Who should be responsible for repairing that harm? Is that something that falls squarely on the parents, the school district, the media? Who needs to rectify this?
Well, let us recall that the Flint water crisis and the criminality occurred when Flint people were lied to about the safety of their drinking water. And I think we'd all agree that was horrible. It never should have occurred, and people should be punished for it. So too, I think that telling these children the wrong information about their health is wrong as well. It started with good intentions. I was partly to blame early on because I didn't want this problem to get covered up, but it's spiraled out of control. And I think the main remedy is to start telling these children exactly what happened to them, and that really the harm was not as bad as we first feared, that they never really were exposed to these horrific levels of lead. I feel the only way out of these sorts of problems is to tell people the truth unvarnished, and with that, maybe the harm can be partly ameliorated.